We're back up to talk about stuff, me and Jared, and
Yes, we are.
we're going to talk about Birthright. So this is going to be the Jared show, and I was like, let's do a topic, and it was like, well, let's just go ahead and do the Birthright thing because we seem to bring it up a lot, and so I was like, let's let it get it out there. A lot of people like second edition D&D, and those are some of my more popular videos. I would say is anything that's like one of the big main games that I do a video on from the old days. You get a lot of people coming out looking for a lot of that content. So let's talk about Birthright. And first off, how did you find out about Birthright?
Oh my God.
If you can remember,
I
put you on the
don't
spot.
I think I saw it like when I was a kid. I saw it like at like local game store in New Jersey somewhere. And I just was like, I remember looking at the cover and I thought the cover was really cool. And then when I was a bit older, I played the 1997 Birthright PC game,
Mm,
which was one of my favorite. One is a fantastic. It's still a fantastic game. Still holds up. It's an insanely good translation of the game into PC format, like being a domain leader and all that stuff.
okay.
So I played that when I was in college and like a little bit when I was in like high school. And then I kind of slept on it. You know, I didn't play that much AD&D. And then I wound up, when I had a little bit extra money, I wound up going back and like, oh yeah, I replayed Birthright the game. And I was like, I got to check this out. I did, and it's just been one of my favorite settings. It's my favorite AD&D setting by far. Uh, Not that I'm not super fluent in all the other ones, so
Right,
that's it's a little biased.
right.
But I do love the idea of like authority. It's such a cool mix of so many different things.
Mhm,
Um, and I don't like I'm not a huge high magic fantasy guy,
mhm.
so Birthright kind of scratches that itch of like Game of Thrones, which game it came out before Game of Thrones,
All
as far
right.
as we know. And then mixed with like Arthurian legend and like the idea of being a domain, a leader, a king, a count, duke, whatever, and then you taking control of a nation and settling the question of after you fight and slay all these monsters and you retire with your castle, what do you do? Well, that's what Birthright takes off. Is like, well, this is what you do. You
So
now
that's
have a
where you start.
kingdom. Exactly, that's
Oh
where you
wow.
start. So
You make your
it's
character
really
from that point. Is that how it works, or do you
yeah.
actually play normal in the
Uh,
Birthright
so so
setting
you
until
you
you
could do
reach that?
both. You could do both, but the base rules are, in standard AD&D, you get to level 20 or whatever, and then like you retire your character, you buy a castle, and
Mhm.
you live large. You're done
Yeah,
adventuring, right?
yeah.
But Game of Thrones was Birthright was basically okay. Well, you've done that, and now you have your castle, and you're now in this domain. So they made this entire world, Cerealia, which is technically connected to all the other D&D worlds
Mhm.
via sigil, but the gate is extremely hidden, and also it's considered a backwater world. And it has its own, like, Birthright's unique, has its own pantheon of gods. Moradin is shared, and that's about it. They really went to town on this setting. Cerealia is a fantastic setting. It's technically Abernus, I think, is um, the world,
Okay.
but it's I think it's Welsh. So there was a bunch of things. They released an insane amount of content for it. I think like 30 plus source books or something like that. Um, and I every time I mention it to like old school guys, they're like, "Oh yeah, Birthright." Like only a few were like, "Oh yeah, I played that." I don't think it was a very popular setting.
Right. Right.
The rules aren't like difficult, but it does get into, okay, like they came up with a bunch of kingdoms. They came up with an entire lore of like where, like, it takes place in Anway. Anway is the south west of technically like four quadrants of a continent. That continent is part of a bigger world, but it's like, kind of like Anglo France. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
basically that. It's a bunch of petty kingdoms all fighting each other after an empire fragmented. There's a looming threat, which is the Gorgon. He has incursions every 25 to 50 years, and the game revolves around expanding your holdings, your territory, forming alliances. They had a combat system, mass combat system in the game that was really cool, but not very well thought out. Has these great cards, which I have some of them on my wall because I just
Quick access. You're like, "Ooh, I
yeah.
need goblin infantry."
So these are like there are hundreds of these cards. So tons of different units. You can enlist different uh, basically different fighting men from across Anway, and there were goblins and dwarves, and they took elves, they had men, they have all different types of things, and like they kind of just put their own spin on it. So they mixed history, dark fantasy, a little bit of high fantasy, lots of legend, Arthurian legend,
Mhm.
and threw politics on top of it, and that's the setting.
That
And
sounds
it's
good.
just really cool. Like it's just a great setting, very well fleshed out, far more fleshed out, I think, than even current settings, which is
Sure.
kind of insane to me.
You mean like current settings that people are making now, or like Wizard of the Coast taking like Ravenloft, and we've talked about that, and then just doing like Barovia. I
So
guess obvious.
even fifth edition taking Barovia, taking it doesn't erase the AD&D stuff, right?
Right.
So it's still there. You have to look for it. They
Right.
haven't invalidated any of that stuff. They've actually been pretty careful about not doing that
Mhm.
because they don't want to like step on both feet.
Right.
But I just mean like Faerun.
Right.
We've talked about this. Faerun. I, I've adventured in Faerun for 15 years. I don't know anything about Faerun. I've adventured in Birthright. We're in Toranin, which is like one of the central crappy kingdoms. My players, they're not domain, they're not lords. My buddy Jim and Syl, they're brothers in campaign. They're brothers, and one is a Justiciar or Templar, and the other one is a Divine Soul, who's his brother. I run a fifth edition conversion
Okay.
of the AD&D rules because I'm not super fluent with the AD&D rules,
Sure. Sure.
just straight up.
And easier
So
to
I
get
was
people to play fifth edition too.
uh and this group is all for playing whatever. It
That's
for
cool.
me it came down to what I was comfortable with.
Mhm.
If I was to do it again, I think we're open to running AD&D just to try it. We've talked about it. And the standard rules, you can run the AD&D domain rules for Birthright with a 5e in the 5e setting and really not have a lot of problems. It's really not a hard translation, but because they're campaigning day to day as adventurers in the realm. They're not they don't only recently has like one of the players like there are things in Birthright called sources. So Birthright has realm magic, which is very different than a lot of the other settings where you have spells that affect the realm.
Oh
Like
wow.
this is mega magic, and to do that, you need to tap into things called sources. Sources are basically where Mayvale, which is magic, where it's able to grow. So the more built up a place is, the lower the Mayvale level is. The less built up it is, the more wild it is, the more naturally magic culminates there. So Mayvale is kind of the currency of the world's magic, and you need to tap and found things called sources, which are the higher the source, the more magic you can draw out of it. And sources are connected by ley lines, and you can actually draw ley lines as a magic user. You can connect and you can kind of build your own ley line network so that you can draw siphon magic to yourself so you can cast these like ridiculously awesome realm spells. But all that is like usually higher level stuff. But there's like layers. So like you can rule the land as a noble or whatever, as a blooded individual. But sometimes like you will have like you don't control the sources of magic in your own realm.
Mm.
Like that's one of the cool things in Birthright. There are many layers. Like there's guilds, there's law, guilds, and what's the other one? Different holdings that you can have. And sometimes you may be linked to the land, right? Invested. There's something called investiture. Priests are very important and powerful. Clerics are incredibly powerful in Birthright because, unlike other settings, they're the only people that can perform the ceremony of investiture. So, blooded individuals, which means they have divine blood from the gods that destroyed themselves, they have to be linked to the land. And only clerics can do that, which makes them politically and financially extremely powerful. So you have to rely on these people that you may not like, but you got to deal with them because they're the ones with all the gold and influence and whatever. Also in Birthright, as a cleric or as a, you just have to say your prayers. So breaking your oath, you can't really break your oath in Birthright. It's as long as you pay your homage to that god, you can do what you want with those powers that are gifted to you. So it's a little bit more unique than something in Faerun where it's like, oh, you have the oaths, you have this, you have that. It's very strict.
Yeah.
Birthright is like more cynical about it. Um, the gods are more determined to have less influence on the world because of what happened in Birthright, which is the great evil one came, and then the pantheon, the peoples fought against him, and finally it got so bad that at this place called Mount Deasmar, which is this big land bridge in the south, um, the forces of evil, elves were bad at first. They joined the bad guys, evil men, all that stuff. Azrae came down himself and strode the land, and then basically, they had this giant Lord of the Rings Titanic battle on the slopes of Mount Deasmar, and then the pantheon of good gods came down, and they strode the field, and there was so much magical energy in one place that it blew up, and it killed the old gods, banished Azrae, and then as their blood rained down, it basically hit all the champions and warriors that were fighting on that field. And the immediate their chief lieutenants of the gods, they became the new pantheon. So they were elevated. But because of that, like there was a lot of all these warriors were like they woke up, and some good guys got splashed with evil blood, some evil guys got splashed with good blood. Like it was a freaking free for all. So they
Wow.
all started murdering each other. Highlander, it's definitely Highlander.
Mhm.
When you kill another blooded individual, you can take their power, and raise your blood level. And but that kind of set the tone for the gods don't want to interfere the same way, unlike in Faerun where they can be directly interfere, right?
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
possible for there are like storytelling elements where like sometimes the pantheon there'll be like a beautiful woman walking through, or like a man in like a silver cloak like walking through the forest at night, and there'll be like this thing around him and you'll encounter him and it winds up being like Cyrano, the silver prince. You know what I mean? Like it happens. Anything can
Yeah.
happen in Birthright.
That wandering god thing, which I
Yeah.
like. I dig that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really neat. But one of the other things is the blood, the blood of Azrai, the bad guy, the evil one. Um, when it hits you, it's not. I mean, it's noticeable, but it doesn't immediately corrupt you or anything. Over time, it does, and essentially, it'll start to grow. It could take 100 years. It could take a year. It just depends. It's completely like random, but what happens is the blood it corrupts you and you become something called an Ansheline, which is a corrupted one, and they're all completely unique. So they're like abominations. So people turn into things,
Mm.
and sometimes they're hyper intelligent. Two most notable Ansheline in the world are Rove Manslayer, who runs his own small elven kingdom. When the During that battle, the elves turned against the bad guys and basically fought with us, because they realized like Azrae is like fucking evil. Well,
Mm.
Rove Manslayer and his cadre, they didn't. They stayed true, and then they fled back into the woods. And they have this right on the border of the kingdom that we adventure on. They have his own small kingdom, and he's nigh on unkillable. He's like over 2,000 years old, and his skin is like stone, and he's just like I said, they have all the stats and everything for AD&D, and you're like, he's just
Super
one.
badass.
He's super badass.
Like, I love seeing that stuff when you see a character and you start looking at their stats like that, like a character like that, and you're just like, "Holy crap! Look at they just
Right.
went nuts with this guy."
Yeah.
You know?
The other most notable Gorgon is the Gorgon. The Gorgon is a 14-foot tall monster man who has most of the Temeril, which is like blood tinged weapons. Those when you kill somebody with a Temeril weapon and stab them through the heart, you take all of their blood power.
Wow.
And the Gorgon sits in the Iron Crown Mountains, and he refers to himself as Prince Razine, who was the chief lieutenant of Azrai, and he thinks that he is Azrai reborn. And like I said, blood and the mechanics that are around blood. There's like 9 different bloodlines, but there's a numerical value to it. And the higher it is, the stronger your bloodline,
Mm,
right? So like there are most characters are like anywhere from like minor or tiny. They're going to be like 4 to like 12. If you're
mhm,
powerful, you're like in the teens and 20s. Prince Raisin is like 98.
mm.
He's just like he's almost pure, um and but he's also hyper intelligent. There's a amazing Birthright book called Blood Enemies, which is it's written as a scribe who's been interviewing all of the Anshelin of the world. And some of the like I said, they're all random. One of them is the Banshee, who's like she's a queen. She rules a kingdom in the east, or I should say central. During the day, she's a beautiful woman. She's a just queen, and she has a court and basically a kingdom. And she has is haunted by something called the Banshee. And she's put out like 1,000 crown, like what do they call it? She's wanted, right? She's gonna a reward for capturing or killing the Banshee. But at night, that woman turns into the Banshee, and her court can't bring themselves to tell her, or are terrified of telling
Oh,
her.
that's
It's like,
cool.
you are the Banshee. So that's like a weird. There's like all these weird fucking rulers. Like a lot of the Anshelin are their domain kings. You know what I mean? Like they rule their own domains, and you have to strive against them in the game, or you could take control of their domain. And they're all completely unique. Some of them are amorphous. There's like a
Mhm.
giant Titan thing that's like this giant foul wind that blows in from the sea, and it's rumored that it's the breath of Azrai or whatever, but it destroys ships, and but sometimes it speaks to sailors. You're just like what? Like it's old school fantasy turned like nuts. There's a 40-foot tall, 40-foot long giant boar in the woods. That's an Anshelin.
That's
And it's
cool.
it's rumored that it was an ancient warrior who basically like resembled that and was corrupted somehow and turned into this thing. And it's been killed before. Groups of bands of knights have gone and slain it and killed it, and it just always comes back, and they don't know why. And it's one of the coolest things about Birthright is everything's open ended. All the source books are written open ended. So it's like, hey, I was just talking about Rove Manslayer. Okay, well, one of the rumors is that during one of the fights in the player secrets of Tornin, the kingdom that we're in, each kingdom has its own player secrets, which have DM stuff and player stuff, and all the politics and holdings and all that stuff listed and maps. It's fucking amazing. But one of the little hints in there is like Rove Manslayer has been conducting for many years something called the Hunt of the Elves, which is they flow out his black court, and his like chief lieutenants and knights and warriors basically flow out of his domain, and any human they find they slay. So it's like The Witcher,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
Witcher is very much like that, and that's what they do. But they've been doing this for hundreds of years. So Tornin has founded orders of knights to basically fight Rove Manslayer and prevent these elves from killing innocent humans, even though humans encroach on the land and cut down trees.
Right.
Which is
Stir them
another.
up.
So it's a really cool aspect. But in that player secrets, they say that there was a young girl, a very young girl, like a 5-year-old girl, who was going to be ridden down by Rove Manslayer himself, but he stopped, and then he picked her up and put her in a saddle and basically left. Which, like, apparently, like elves and stuff from there's different elven kingdoms, and they don't all agree with each other. But there's been like diplomats and stuff being traded left and right. That like is Rove going soft? Like, and his like they hint that there are defectors and stuff from his court, that there are like something's going on in Rove Manslayer's like domain, who historically is this racist, xenophobic murderer, and all of a sudden he picks up a human child and leaves, and like the rest of his war party's like, what the fuck? So you can just that's just mentioned in the book, just a little 3 sentences, in the
Yeah.
player secrets, and I'm building and have built an entire campaign off of 3 sentences.
That's great, yeah.
That's how rich this stuff is,
It
though.
gives you a lot of meat. Gives you a
Yeah,
lot of, a catalyst for, like, adventuring thought and what you can
yeah.
do with it, and that's some of the best stuff, obviously, with it, and some of the stuff you're talking about, of course, I'm getting hints of, like, some other games, maybe, it's something they maybe thought of or something, so, obviously, like, with Ravenloft, you have the Dark Lords of each of, like, the domains of dread, so, kinda reminds me of that a little bit, where they have their area, and they're powerful, and they're kind of over it, but then also you talk about, like, the blood coming down and, like, it being stronger the closer you are, that obviously reminds me of right here, Vampire, where, the older the vampire, the closer you are to Cain and his blood and that generation, which I dig all that. And of course, when you tell me all this stuff, I'm just sitting here going, "Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. Really cool." And like it's like stuck. It's like stuck in this game from started in '95, and like it's a shame because it's obviously fantastic. Now I know they did some novels, right? Did they do some
Yes.
Birthright? And they did some Birthright novels.
Yeah, so I have 4 of them. I've read 3.
Mhm.
I think they did at least 4. I've read 2 or 3. I have all of them, except for 1. I think 1 was really rare. I found 1 really rare one at
Mhm.
Powell's Books for, like, $4, big hardbound. It's just
And
called
you're like,
War. Yeah.
yes,
So that was pretty amazing. But, they're pretty good. The writing's alright. It's not the greatest thing, but it's also
right.
not terrible.
The
It's
writers
very
disassociated from the creators of it, maybe? Like, is it
No,
the
it
from the
it
same
feels
people?
it feels pretty close. Like, I'm not gonna say it's they're not bad books.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say they're, the Dark Elf trilogy, level of, like, greatness.
Mhm.
They're kind of all one-offs. I think there's Great Heart, which is about a human child that gets adopted by the Cetylene, which are the elves, or Cetylin, and he grows up amongst them, and he's like a great bowman. There's definitely elements of, like, Baron, from, like, Lord of the Rings, and, like, they I don't know. They're not bad. They're fine. The thing is that there's just so much territory to cover in Birthright. I mean, and I wouldn't say, like, I think you're partially right, like it being locked, because they don't support it, even though they did mention Birthright and Cerealia in the 5e core books, which I thought was a nice nod, even though they don't do anything. They're like, hey, here's some other adventuring worlds, that are connected, and technically,
Right,
you can go to Avernus through Sigil,
right.
which I thought is a really cool idea. I haven't really worked that into my campaign yet, but I thought it might be kind of a cool thing to do,
Mhm.
um, because I love how all the worlds feel interconnected, but I also do feel like Birthright is the absolute black sheep of AD&D, mostly because it just did something so different.
Right.
It just really,
I
the core
wonder
rules, the 3 books are just very like, hey, you know how to play AD&D? Now here's like, this isn't just like, here's some weapons and armor and what.
Mhm.
No, this is a complete different rule set for, like, ruling a domain. You know what I mean? And you're just like,
Right.
Okay.
Do you
So,
do you have any inkling of why it didn't work? Like, it wasn't this big powerhouse for them, even though they made a bunch of products, which TSR, of course, made tons of products even for stuff that might have not done very well. But like, was it intimidating to look at? Did people already have like a preconceived notion when they looked at it? I know with me, it seemed like something maybe I saw a lot of like real big field plate, like real big stuff like that, kind of like Excalibur or something like that.
yeah.
And then I remember flipping through it, and the art was fantastic. And I don't know. I don't know exactly. Obviously, it got a lot of praise, and I've never heard anybody say anything bad about it. And I think that's interesting too. Is like you'll hear some stuff. Maybe some people didn't like that setting, but like ultimately, that nostalgia goes a long way, and we go, oh, that was a great setting. And maybe during the time, maybe it was a little bit different. But what is there anything that you have that you can kind of like think of why maybe it didn't? We don't know more about it, or whatever the case may
Um,
be.
I have some thoughts. I think there's a few things which again, my AD&D experiences are much more
Right.
limited than a
For
lot of
sure.
people probably watching this. I did play AD&D. I played it for a year
Mhm.
which is not really that much. And then another group quickly transitioned into third. That's when I really started playing. Is 3 and 3.5.
Right.
So, but what I've talked to people about it, and I have read some stuff about it, and from what I've read and heard, it felt like one overbloat from FASA from TSR.
Mm.
Sorry, BattleTech guy.
It's like
From
autopilot.
TSR,
Battletech.
another overbloat.
Yeah.
So overbloat at the time. Also, at the time, you have other settings coming out that are pushing the envelope of role playing.
Mhm.
Things like the World of Darkness,
Mhm.
things like other worlds. Like one of the, well, even though I love Birthright and I think it is a fantastic setting, it does feel like classic D&D. That feels really good now because
Mhm.
it feels retro, right? It feels like,
Mhm.
wow, like it's just like kind of a back to basics. Like, hey, we're fighting orogs and
Right.
they're riding lizards, and there's just gnolls and packs of gnolls and goblins, and it's very like classic wandering monster fantasy with a lot of, if you want to get into the politics, there's heavily in politics. Um, it's
Which is
also
work.
like,
Which is
what's that?
work.
Which is
Po-
work, yeah.
Politics is work.
Yes, it is work. Yeah, managing your domain and all that stuff. There was some paperwork involved. So I would say overbloat uh, from
Overboard.
TSR first. Second, yeah, just it looks like classic D&D, which at the time there was just a glut of other classic D&D stuff. I
Mhm.
think people wanted more. Had they released the setting, which they did, they released 4 or 5 box sets for it, which is insane when you think
That's
about it.
big. Yeah.
What is it? Cities of the Sun, which covers the East, which are the Kinesi, which are essentially the Moors. They're kind of like Middle Eastern slash Moorish. Fantastic. Their politics are different. The way they look at magic is completely different. They worship a different, not the same pantheon, but they emphasize a different part of the pantheon. I mean, that Cities of the Sun is just a fucking awesome box set. Excuse my language. Um, Very well fleshed out, and it released with sea battle rules, which was because they're a seafaring race, which was really cool. But had they released it that first, it may have actually done better because that's
Mm.
kind of like Arabian Nights.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they very heavily
Al
leaned into like
Qadim.
Aladdin. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe not. But
Right.
when they released it in just in Anwe, it's Welsh. It's hard to pronounce. A lot of the stuff in there very hard to pronounce because
Mhm.
you don't pronounce it the way that it's written. It's just
Right.
like Mayvale is written like Meighleighn, and you're like, okay,
Help. You're like, help me. Help.
yeah, because it's like Gaelic or Welsh or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and it was very intentional for the person who wrote the setting that they were really trying to pay homage to a lot of the stuff. Um, in the north, you have the Rourke Highlands, which is another box set, which is a Viking and Scandinavian, that those peoples. And had they released in either of those, maybe it would have done a little bit better. But it just looks like, okay, this is France, England. So it just looks like typical, yeah, like
Right.
high Middle Ages type of look, with some fantasy elements. So I don't think it had like, from a visual perspective, I don't think it looked that different. And then again, third thing is yeah, just competition from other games
Right.
that were just doing other things that were far expanding the RPG experience in a way that this expanded the AD&D experience and added a lot of extra depth to that, but it used the same rules. It was the same, an AD&D by that time was already 15 years old,
Mhm.
right? So
Possibly
something
so.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it matters if it's like first edition and stuff like that. But I mean, I can definitely see what you're saying because, I mean, if you think about it, it was like Ravenloft. Okay, I get that. Like, it's Gothic, it's Dracula, it's Frankenstein, and you got Dark Sun. It's like, oh, it's a world. It's a, it's a huge desert, and there's no water, and like there's no metal, and there's,
It's unique.
yeah,
It's a
it's
unique
unique.
setting.
And then you can kind of, then you got Spelljammer, and it's very unique. And then you got Planescape, extremely unique. Like it just keeps
Yeah.
doing that. So then all of a sudden, kind of to revert back, I think you're pretty much right on the money where it's kind of like oh, okay, yeah, well, that doesn't have anything weird. You know what I mean? Like just on a brief look at it, you know what I mean?
Brief look, yeah,
Yeah.
brief look.
You're
It
like,
doesn't. It's not
oh,
that different. But when you actually throw your feet into it, you're like, this is
whoa.
way different.
Imagine if that
In
came
a
out
lot.
earlier. Imagine if it came out before those. How it have been. How well it would have done.
I don't know. Hopefully, it would have done well.
Oh,
Um,
I mean, it's. I guess that's the thing. What are we judging this on? TSR. They did what they did, and we're down. They were down that downward trajectory at some point there. But I mean, ultimately, it did do good because people think very highly of it. It's the fact that it's not been done anything today.
that does not mean it did good.
Right.
That
Right.
means
But
it was good,
yeah,
but
it will.
financially, like, it was financially, you can't even say, we can't even say if it was financially successful, because I've read articles from around like 2000 something about people, and later, about people who were in the production line and stuff of TSR, talking about what was happening. And they would support and overproduce for products that weren't selling. And I
Right.
think there was a lot of passion behind Birthright. There was a lot. I mean, you can't help. Almost all the source books are really good. There's a few player secrets books that I felt they phoned them in, but there's like 20 of them, and
Mm.
I think they phoned in like four, which
Yeah,
is
you'll
like,
get some misses.
yeah, there's a few misses, and they're not even misses. They're just like, hey, this could have been way
Yeah.
better.
It's not
You
up
know,
here quality wise. You've been doing this and now I feel this. It's still
yeah,
good, but like
it feels
these are
like a
better.
product that was just needed to be put out,
Right.
and they didn't really do a lot of the homework. But overall, I think all of it's great. And they were releasing books on, like, I have the book of Magecraft, the book of Priestcraft. The setting got cut and was, when they got bought by WotC, they just trimmed all these settings, which I
Mm.
don't blame WotC for doing, by the way. People like blame them for not continuing like all these other, like, all these settings and stuff, and it's like, dude, there's just too many. Like, the company like that can't obviously, TSR couldn't support the amount of things that they were doing and juggle
Right.
all those balls. So I get it. That I don't think the setting was probably selling very well, and I think it was. You look at the amount of cardboard and the amount of material in these box sets, and you're like, this had to be expensive.
Mm.
That's then. This had to be expensive to produce. I mean,
Right.
hundreds of those cards in one box set. Every box set, you'd get new cards, or like two or three of the box sets, you'd get like 100+ cards or some shit. They're beautiful, and all the artwork that goes into them, and all this stuff, and it's like, just the production value is insane. It's amazing, but
Really
it's
good art.
also probably not sustainable,
Right.
and I think there's other issues with it. Anytime you link like blood to divine stuff, it's not really a good look. I
Mm.
think the 90s was a unique era, really leaning into the Arthurian nature of it. But nowadays, like, I brought this up in previous videos, where like sitting at the writing table with these people, and they were like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, I think they can do it if they just change the nature of it a little bit,
Mm.
and maybe, I don't know how they would do it, but I'm sure they can figure it out. But at this point, I mean, if they haven't picked it up, but I don't know, because they're redoing all these old settings, so I don't
And
know.
maybe the next people that maybe own D&D, if it's not them in the future, then maybe someone will be like, "Hey, this comes along with it." Like when we buy this big package from Hasbro, and they'll be like, and Wizard of the Coast will be like, "Oh, well, what about this? Let's
Well,
work with that."
you know what's weird? I wonder if, because I don't know if the creator's still alive. He probably is. It's so detached from D&D.
Mhm.
I actually gotta wonder whether they could actually buy the rights off of, like, Wizard of the Coast,
Right. Well,
and just
Rich Baker's still
reprint it.
alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both still alive.
So I wonder if they've ever approached them about that, because they don't support AD&D. Obviously, haven't
Right.
in 25 years. So, like, is it? I don't know if it would be possible to literally just take it. Probably not. They probably wouldn't
Who knows? I mean, it,
wouldn't
it seems.
wouldn't let it go.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I don't know. It's just weird to me to have something like that that's so cool that is sitting by. But they do have the PDFs on Drive Through RPG, and
they do.
the only thing to really show people to send people that way is I'll have a link where people can go and go check out the Birthright, and they don't have that I'm aware of. And of course, I know it's difficult because I know some of those books had some really interesting way that they laid them out with the art, kind of with the words kind of over the art and stuff like that. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, which it looks really nice, but probably from like a print standpoint, it might be a little bit challenging. They've had that before with some of their books. I know for some D&D stuff, they had a kind of like a print on the back, like almost like a design on the pages, and so
Yeah.
they kind of
Yep.
had to go and really tweak it. But I don't know if there's any print on demand. I haven't really gone through it and looked at it yet. If
I
there's
have
any,
not seen print on demand for
the main
Birthright.
core hasn't been. And the thing is, it's so funny is if they would put the core, the box set, the main campaign setting, because it was a box set, right? The campaign setting.
Yes, it was a
Yeah,
box.
if they put that out like they did Dark Sun, it would sell. It would sell pretty big, I think.
Well, you know what's funny, given the current like changing political dynamic that's going on in this country, it seems to switch all the time.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised in the future if they actually did do something like that, where it's less, even though it's quote unquote, we're getting away from hyper PC stuff.
Right,
You know that they're starting to back off of that
right.
now. For years, I think they've
It
noticed that
wanes and
yeah,
comes and goes.
yeah, but I think it really got strong, and then it's kind of waning, you know.
Right,
So maybe they will reach back and do something like that. I agree with you. I think it's a shame. I think there's a lot of merit in the system in the setting, and it's just it feels like a nuts and bolts setting. It feel you know how like people like
right,
Star Wars, like but they don't like the Jedi, but they like
right.
Star Wars. That's what Birthright feels like. It feels like you could play blooded individuals, and it revolves around them. They're political leaders and they're rulers, and but there are many just normal, like in my campaign there are unblooded, we have unblooded people. And the cool thing is the 5e conversion. I use like two or three different 5e conversion documents, but mostly this guy, what's his name, something marsupial, he did a great conversion document. And it's just the normal people in the world, and they affect the world. They're personal bodyguards. They're just standard people that help blooded individuals like into, or they can become blooded themselves. That's the other thing. You can transfer your blood on your deathbed. You can literally transfer your divine blood to somebody else,
That's
and you
cool.
don't have to be blooded for it to happen. So there are great lords and stuff that's another thing in the dynamics of the game, where even if a lord has like several children, there are times when all those children, they're ignored for a favorite successor, and he bestows his blood on that person, which can
I like
cause
that.
obviously its own problems.
Yeah, yeah.
but
Kids
um
come
but
around
yeah, yeah,
like a
exactly.
wheel. Yeah. What? You
Yeah.
got the money? You know? Who are you? You know?
So it feels very human.
Yeah.
It's the most, even despite the divine blood and this and that, it feels like the people in that setting are the most human. They're not I mean, there are vampires, there are all these utter horrors, but the powers that be, the kingdoms that are like, they were all former counties essentially of the great empire. Now that's why they're all dukes and counts and viscounts. They're all fighting each other for what the remains. One of the books is called Ruins of Empire, and Michael Roel, it was the last emperor who led this like great crusade against like the Gorgon, and so they fought on like the slopes of uh the what do they call them, the Iron Crown Mountains, and the Gorgon came out and they fought man to man. Like he challenged the Gorgon to man combat, which is very Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Um, and so Michael Roel like goes down, but before he dies, he basically channeled his blood into Cyrilia itself, into the land, and so he robbed the Gorgon of his great treasure, right? But after Michael died, he had no successor, and essentially, like all the king, like his empire just started to crumble.
Mm.
So it's all fragmentary. That's 500 years ago, and all these petty kingdoms have been like murdering each other to try to like fighting these wars to try to reconquer and
Man.
become, be the leader of the imperial city, which has the Iron Throne.
Ooh.
Yes, it has the
It
Iron
does
Throne.
it it has a lot of that going for it, doesn't it?
Well, this is again. It came out in '95. I think Game of Thrones came out in '97.
Well,
So either George R. R. Martin. I think George R. R. Martin is a big Birthright fan, I guess.
maybe
but it
so.
but it's got a lot of weird similarities.
Yeah.
I think it's '97, right?
Well, let's see.
Or was it '95?
Game of Thrones came out in '96.
So 1 year after.
Yeah, it said he began writing the first volume in 91.
Okay.
So maybe he was writing it and just I don't know, maybe they just
But the creators wouldn't be able to read what he's writing,
right.
right? It has to be released, like, not like today when you can read chapters of the
Right.
new
There
book
could be
or
very
whatever.
much a connection. It'd be cool to if you know, if someone could ask him, "Hey, did you ever look at Birthright?" That's and
You'd
to
probably be
see
like, "What the fuck
it
is that?"
seems like a setting that's very layered, you know what I mean? Like, so if I think about Ravenloft, right? So you're in this these dark domains, and you've got the Dark Lord there, and it's kind of set, and that's kind of it. And like even Dark Sun, like you can do a bunch of stuff in Dark Sun, but like it seems like what you're telling me, this does have a lot of that political layering and paths that you can take where you can kind of hack this off and hack that off and just do it this and
Yeah.
maybe you're part of these people or you're not part of those and you don't want to kind of deal and it seems like it's definitely got a lot of those layers, and that's what makes a good setting. A lot of times, in my mind, too, is or anything really where you can be like you said about Star Wars. Star Wars is a good example of it. Like Jedi's cool; they don't really excite me anymore. I'm not exactly sure what Star Wars would excite me anymore, but like I was always more the Han Solo type, and I wanted to do that type of things. And then maybe a little hint here and there, but don't give me the full cake of Jedi, which they did multiple times. So and then I was like, all right, well, I'm kind of done with that.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, I mean it sounds really cool. It's not a setting that, and I think I probably led into that as well. What you're talking about, there was other games kind of doing some weird, cool stuff, and I think that when it came to fantasy, I think a lot of people were probably looking at like World of Darkness or games like that and trying to play some different type of just in general, maybe some darker
Yes.
games, maybe some kind of like maybe some cyber type games, like kind of
Well,
thinking about the future.
we're at an inflection point, I think, just like they were.
Mhm.
If you think about it, again, when this came out, you're talking AD&D, I think came out what, 80? Something like that?
Oh,
82?
you talking about like the first
Yeah,
or like
the first rendition of AD&D, because D&D came out what, 75?
ADN came out in 77. AD&D did the first edition.
Okay, so first edition of AD&D came out in 77. This comes out in 94. Almost 20 years,
Mhm.
right? People have been playing this game. So I think there was an inflection point of like, hey, there's all these new creators, there's all
Yeah.
this new stuff. It's not D&D. It doesn't have to be D&D. I think there was a press revolution, right? There was all these companies springing up and
Mhm.
producing stuff, just stuff and new settings. So I feel like we're kind of there now with
Yeah.
current 5e. There's definitely an inflection point where people are like, you know what, maybe I don't want to play D&D anymore. I want to play something different and
Yeah.
weird. And unfortunately Birthright kind of fell into that. Like, they were at the top of their game, in my opinion, but also the company was already starting to wane. It was
Right.
struggling under its own weight of like, I'm just
Multiple
looking back
fronts.
at this, yeah, product
Multiple
and
fronts. Product,
ideas.
competition,
Yeah. So it's
fatigue a little bit.
yeah, I think all of that, the market obviously is different than it was. There was less then. But
Mhm.
also what I'll say is the quality then for those products that made it into production was better.
That's
I
good.
think I think almost everybody can agree with that. And that's not shitting on people today. I think there's just more product to
Right.
sift through, as in like fucking 500 times more product. Oh, my buddy's calling me. Um,
That's all good. I think
yeah,
unless you've got anything more you need to say
there's
about
more
it.
I want to talk. I could talk about Birthright for another hour, but
Well,
uh,
maybe down the road we'll do another one. You know what I mean? Like
okay,
we'll kind of reevaluate it and see what people say about it from this video, and we'll do another one maybe. So
or
I
maybe
appreciate you letting
we'll
us
just
know
do a
all
part
your
two.
knowledge.
We'll just do a
Huh?
part two.
Oh yeah, we'll do a part two.
We got
Yeah,
to talk about
I
the
don't know if we'll do.
Shadowfell. We got to talk about the Shadowfell, man. That's intrinsic to Birthright. That's the way they
Oh, that
handle
was
the Shadowfell. It's awesome.
that what they
So,
did in fifth edition? Didn't something called the Shadowfell in fifth edition?
yeah, they pay
They just
lip
use that
service
name.
to it. Well, they separated different things. I could talk about it for a while, but that's something I do. Like I said, there's so much
We'll do a
content
second
to
edition, a
cover.
second parter then.
Second part, I think a second
Yeah.
part would be worth it.
Sounds good to me. Well, thanks a lot for all your birthright knowledge because you definitely had it. I was like, wow, look at him go. He just
Oh,
spouting it
I
off.
could talk about it
That's
forever.
great. That's great.
It's
Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this. Was a D&D second edition. Always gets a lot of people enjoying those videos. So hopefully, if you didn't know about Birthright, you can check it out, and I'll have a link down in the description if you want to pick up some of the PDFs. I wish I could send you to some print on demands, but maybe look on these. And I know they get quite expensive on eBay, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Birthright
they're not
can.
cheap. Some are cheap, but the core box set you could probably pick up for about 150.
That's pretty
Um,
normal now for box sets for core settings for D&D, or it's low.
and it's worth it.
That's great. Yeah,
It's really good. It's absolute, and I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. It's just really good.
it's
It's
great.
just that you're buying a piece of history, and it's a really good setting.
Well, you
So
can feel the passion that you have for it, and I think that shows. So take what you will from that. I think anybody that's got passion for it, you're going to see, oh well, this has got a lot of meat to it. So there it is. There's Birthright Part 1, and Part 2 to be
yay!
continued. It says the end question mark. All right.